You will be my own. The millionaire CEO swore. 5 years later, their paths crossed. He saw her face on a magazine cover, and something inside him shattered and rebuilt itself all at once. He swore that one day she would be his. But when fate finally brought them face to face, she was no longer the supermodel the world adored. She was just a soul trying to remember how to live. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit that like button, and buckle up. Because this story will prove that sometimes true love arrives exactly when the heart isn't ready for it. 5 years ago, a simple moment changed the trajectory of Nathan Porter's life forever. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in his corner office on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Coffee steaming on his mahogany desk. Contracts waiting for his signature. The flawless routine of a CEO who had transformed his family's struggling fashion house into one of the most prestigious luxury brands in North America. Nathan was 33 years old, commanded Porter & Stone couture with an iron fist, and was known for 3 things: ruthless perfectionism, absolute control over every detail of his business, and a heart encased in steel. Nathan didn't believe in love. Not anymore. His mother had walked out when he was 9 years old. No warning, no explanation, just a note on the refrigerator. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." Since then, Nathan learned that loving someone meant losing them. He grew up alongside a father who was emotionally absent, a man who drowned himself in work as a way to forget. Nathan did the same. He built walls, high walls, solid, impenetrable walls. Relationships were superficial at best. Beautiful women passed through his life like seasons, interesting for a while, disposable after. None got close enough to see the cracks. None were worth the risk. Until that Tuesday morning. The magazine was sitting on his desk, left there by his assistant along with his morning coffee. Nathan was about to flip through it absently, the way he always did, when he stopped. The cover. A woman stared directly at the camera. Honey blonde hair fell in waves over her shoulders, catching the light like spun gold, porcelain skin, delicate features, a serene, almost untouchable presence. But it wasn't her beauty that held him captive. It was what he saw in her eyes: strength, pain, melancholy, and a silent resilience, as if she too had learned not to trust the world. Nathan stood there, frozen, holding that image like someone holding something sacred. He read the name, Victoria Lane, 25 years old, Brazilian-American model, meteoric rise to fame. The article detailed her journey from a modest upbringing in rural Oregon to the runways of Milan and Paris. But what caught Nathan's attention was something she said in the interview. "I don't model clothes. I model survival." He read those words 3 times. It was as if she had put into language something he'd never known how to express, something he'd felt his entire life but could never name. In the months that followed, Nathan tracked Victoria's career from a distance. Not obsessively, he told himself, just inevitably. She was everywhere. International magazine covers, campaigns for renowned brands, fashion shows that stopped the world. Victoria Lane became an icon, and Nathan became a man haunted by a face he'd never touched. He didn't understand it. It made no sense. How could someone fall in love with a photograph, with a moment frozen in time? But that's exactly what was happening. Every time he saw an image of her, he felt the same thing. A tightness in his chest, an absurd desire to know the woman behind that mask of impeccable beauty, to ask what had hurt her, to understand why that gaze carried so much pain disguised as strength. Until 2 years later, he discovered she had gotten married. The news was everywhere. Victoria Lane and a real estate mogul. Discreet wedding at a vineyard in Napa Valley. Photos of the couple smiling, her in a simple white dress, him holding her hand like he was holding the entire world. Nathan felt something unexpected, a stab of jealousy mixed with relief. Jealousy because she belonged to someone else. Relief because now he had a legitimate excuse to bury this feeling once and for all. He wasn't a man who crossed boundaries. He wasn't a man who pursued married women. If fate had decided Victoria Lane wasn't meant for him, so be it. Nathan locked that feeling in a dark corner of his soul and swore never to think of her again. It worked for a while, until 3 weeks ago. He was in a meeting with his marketing team, discussing Porter & Stone's new collection. Sales were declining. The brand needed impact, something to reconnect with the public, to bring back the prestige that was slowly fading. "We need a fresh face," said the creative director. "Someone iconic, someone who represents rebirth." That's when someone suggested, "What about Victoria Lane?" Nathan felt the name slice through the air like a blade. "Victoria Lane is retired," someone commented. "She's been gone from the runways for over a year." "Why?" Nathan asked, trying to sound casual. The director looked at him with a somber expression. "Her husband died. Cancer. It was devastating. They say she completely isolated herself. Nobody knows where she is." The silence that followed was deafening. For years, he'd pretended that feeling had died, but hearing her name spoken aloud was enough to wake the past. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony of his penthouse, looking at the illuminated city, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions that made no sense. He didn't know her, had never exchanged a word with her. How could he feel this strange mixture of compassion, renewed desire, something that felt dangerously close to hope? But deep down, Nathan knew the truth. He had never forgotten Victoria Lane. And now, fate was giving him a second chance. A chance to finally meet the woman who had changed something inside him 5 years ago. To discover if that look was real. If the pain he saw in the photographs matched the pain he carried. Or if it was all just an illusion created by a man who never knew how to love. 2 weeks later, Nathan discovered where she was. Aspen, Colorado. An isolated cabin, high in the mountains, surrounded by pine trees and silence. He spent days planning. The professional excuse was solid, convince her to be the face of the new campaign. But the real reason was that he needed to see her. He needed to look into that woman's eyes and understand once and for all if what he felt was real, or just the obsession of a man who never learned how to feel. On the morning he decided to drive up to the mountains, Nathan looked at his own reflection in the mirror. Impeccable suit, subtle cologne, controlled expression. On the outside, he was the ruthless CEO as always. On the inside, he was a terrified man. Because for the first time in years, Nathan Porter was about to do something he swore he'd never do, risk his heart. That morning, as he drove up the mountain road toward Aspen, he didn't know if he was going in search of a woman or himself. The fog covered the mountains like a veil of secrets. Nathan drove slowly along the winding road that climbed toward Aspen. The car glided between sharp curves, tall pines on both sides, the air getting colder with each mile. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't want distractions. He needed to think. Or maybe he needed to stop thinking. It had been 5 years since that gaze had haunted him. 5 years since he saw Victoria Lane for the first time on a magazine cover and felt something change inside him. Something he didn't ask for, didn't want, but that stubbornly continued to exist. And now here he was, driving up a foggy mountain, going to meet a woman he'd never known. A woman who somehow had always felt close. The excuse was professional, solid, even. Convince her to be the face of Porter & Stone's new campaign. The brand needed a rebirth, and Victoria Lane represented exactly that. Beauty that survived, strength that rose from the ashes. But Nathan knew the truth. He wasn't there for the brand. He was there because he needed to see her. He needed to look into that woman's eyes and prove to himself that she existed in reality, that she wasn't just an illusion created by his lonely mind, that the gaze that had disarmed him 5 years ago was real. And perhaps, just perhaps, understand why, Among millions of faces in the world, it was hers that remained. The road narrowed. The fog grew denser. Nathan slowed down, his fingers gripping the steering wheel. He felt his heart beating faster, a strange nervousness settling in his chest. He, who commanded meetings with millionaire investors without flinching, who closed international deals with the coldness of a strategist, was now nervous about ringing a doorbell. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't a business visit. This was the moment when he finally risked his heart. Meanwhile, high in the mountains, Victoria Lane was in her kitchen. It was a simple construction, but cozy. Wooden walls, high ceiling, large windows overlooking a garden surrounded by pine trees. The kind of place someone goes when they want to disappear. And that's exactly what Victoria had done. A year and a half ago, she had isolated herself there after burying her husband. After watching the man she loved waste away little by little, consumed by cancer that gave no reprieve. After holding his hand while life drained away, powerless, watching the end of something that should have lasted decades. When it was all over, Victoria couldn't go back to Los Angeles, couldn't face the lights, the cameras, the world that demanded she be strong, beautiful, impeccable, as if pain could be covered with makeup, as if grief had an expiration date. So she fled to that cabin in the middle of nowhere, to the silence, to the fog that hid the world and, in a way, hid her too. Victoria lived a simple routine now. She woke up early, made coffee, tended the garden, read old books. She didn't answer phone calls, didn't respond to messages, cut ties with the fashion industry, with the agencies, with everything that had once defined her. She was no longer Victoria Lane, the supermodel. She was just Victoria, the widow, the broken woman trying to piece herself together in a place where nobody was watching. But solitude had a price, and the price was the echo of memories, the echo of her husband's laughter, the echo of promises that went unfulfilled, the echo of the emptiness that pain left behind. Sometimes Victoria caught herself talking to herself. Other times, she spent hours sitting on the porch, staring at nothing, trying to feel something beyond the weight in her chest. Guilt. She felt guilty for being alive, guilty for sometimes forgetting his face for a few seconds, guilty for, in rare moments, feeling a flicker of desire to live again, as if it were a betrayal, as if starting over meant erasing everything he was. Victoria finished washing her coffee cup and looked out the window. The fog was thicker today. She could barely see the pines on the other side of the garden. She liked it that way. The mist protected her, hid the world out there and hid her from the world. But at that exact moment, without her knowing, fate was driving up the mountain in a suit, expensive cologne, and a past she'd never lived. Nathan finally spotted the gate. He stopped the car in front of the property and turned off the engine. He sat there, staring at the cabin through the fog. It was exactly as he'd imagined, isolated, silent, the kind of place where someone goes to heal wounds or hide from them. He took a deep breath, checked his watch. It was 10:17 in the morning. Checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, straightened his hair, ran a hand over his face, tried to look confident. But inside, he was completely lost. What was he going to say? "Hi, Victoria. I've been obsessed with your face for 5 years. I came here pretending it's work. But really, I just want to look in your eyes and confirm you're real." Oh. Nathan laughed at himself. Pathetic. But he was already here. There was no turning back. He got out of the car. The cold mountain air cut his skin. He closed his coat, took another deep breath, and walked to the gate. He rang the bell. The sound echoed in the morning silence, and then nothing. Nathan waited 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. He was about to ring again when he heard footsteps. Slow, hesitant footsteps approaching. And then, Through the fog, he saw her. She was standing on the other side of the gate, arms crossed, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, wearing a wool sweater and simple jeans. Nothing like the magazine photos. Nothing like the impeccable model from the runways. And still, she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen in his life. For a moment, neither said anything. They just looked at each other. And Nathan felt, for the first time, the true weight of that gaze in person, without filters, without editing, strength, pain, and something he couldn't decipher. Victoria finally broke the silence. "Can I help you?" Her voice was deeper than he'd imagined, tired, but still captivating. Nathan swallowed hard. "Victoria Lane." She frowned, suspicious. "Who's asking?" He took a step forward. "My name is Nathan Porter. I drove up from Denver. I need to talk to you." Victoria didn't move, stayed standing there, eyes fixed on him, evaluating, measuring, deciding whether she should send him away or hear what he had to say. Finally, after a silence that seemed eternal, she sighed. "About what?" Nathan hesitated. About what? About the campaign. About the fact that he'd been obsessed with her for 5 years. About the fate that brought them here. He chose the safest answer. About the future. Victoria stared at him for a few more seconds, and then, without saying anything, she unlocked the gate. "Come in." Nathan crossed the gate, his heart beating wildly. And in that instant, without knowing it, both took the first step towards something that would change everything forever. Victoria closed the gate behind him and walked in silence toward the cabin. Nathan followed, keeping a respectful distance but unable to look away. Even casual, she moved with deliberate control, as if measuring each gesture to not reveal more than necessary. Victoria Lane was a fortress, and Nathan was about to try to cross her walls. They climbed the wooden steps of the porch. Victoria pushed the door, it creaked slightly, and made a sharp gesture with her hand. "Come in." Nathan entered. The cabin was exactly as he'd imagined it would be. Simple, but welcoming. Smell of burning wood mixed with coffee. Few pieces of furniture. No unnecessary luxury. Wooden walls with some framed photographs. Landscapes. Never people. It was the kind of place someone went to forget, or to be forgotten. Victoria closed the door behind them and pointed to the sofa. "You can sit." Nathan obeyed. Sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped over his knees, trying to seem more relaxed than he actually was. Victoria remained standing, leaning against the wall next to the unlit fireplace, arms still crossed, eyes fixed on him, evaluating, measuring. The silence settled between them, heavy, tense, loaded with unasked questions. Finally, Victoria broke the ice. "Nathan Porter." She repeated his name as if testing the sound in her own voice. "CEO of Porter & Stone Couture." He raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Do you know me?" Victoria gave a dry half-smile, almost ironic. "I worked in fashion for years, Nathan. Everyone knows Porter & Stone." He felt a strange relief mixed with disappointment. Of course she knew him, but not the way he knew her. To her, he was just another name in the industry. To him, she was everything. "Why are you here?" Victoria asked, straight to the point. No beating around the bush, no unnecessary pleasantries. Nathan took a deep breath. This was it. He hesitated. Her eyes, cold at first, now seemed less distant. And it was there, in that second of mutual vulnerability, that the words simply escaped. "I'm here because I need you." Victoria arched an eyebrow. "Need me for a campaign?" he continued, his voice firm, professional. "Porter & Stone's new collection. We need a face that represents rebirth, strength. Beauty that survived." He paused, eyes fixed on hers. "And you're the only person who can do that." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she let out a short, bitter laugh. You drove all the way up here to offer me a modeling job. I'm retired, Nathan. I know. Then why are you still here? Nathan hesitated, because the truth was too complicated to say. Because he couldn't explain even to himself why he'd crossed the state to see her. Because admitting he'd been obsessed with her for 5 years would sound insane. So he chose another truth. Because I saw you on a magazine cover 5 years ago. And that look changed something in me. The silence returned, but this time it was different. Victoria looked at him in a new way, no longer defensive, no longer suspicious, curious. What look? She asked, her voice lower now. Nathan leaned forward slightly. The look of someone who's lost everything but still chooses to stand. Victoria held her breath. Nobody had ever said that to her. Nobody had ever seen that in her. She swallowed hard, feeling something move inside her chest. Something dangerous. Something she'd buried along with her husband. You don't know me, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I know, Nathan replied, but I want to. Their eyes met, and for the first time, without barriers, without defenses, they truly saw each other. Not as CEO and model, not as strangers, but as two broken people who recognized the pain in each other. Her fingers intertwined nervously, almost the same gesture she used to make at the hospital when waiting for news that never came. Victoria looked away first, ran a hand over her face as if trying to compose herself. I can't do this, she murmured. Why not? Because I'm not that person anymore. The Victoria Lane from the magazines died along with my husband. Nathan stood slowly, took 2 steps toward her, but stopped before invading her space. And who are you now? Victoria met his gaze. There were tears in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I don't know. Nathan felt his chest tighten. He knew that feeling, of being lost inside your own life, of not knowing who you were anymore after everything fell apart. He took another step. Then find out, with me. Victoria shook her head, laughing sadly. You don't understand. I can't go back to that world. I can't pretend I'm okay, that I'm strong, that I'm not. I'm not asking you to pretend, Nathan interrupted. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are now, with the pain, with the scars, with everything. Victoria closed her eyes. For a moment, Nathan thought she was going to send him away. But then she opened her eyes again, and there was something different there. A spark, small, fragile, but alive. I need to think, she said finally. Nathan nodded. Okay. How much time do you need? Victoria took a step back, putting distance between them again. I don't know. Maybe a few days. Nathan pulled a business card from the inside pocket of his coat and placed it on the coffee table. My number's on there. When you decide, call me. Victoria looked at the card but didn't pick it up. Nathan walked to the door, but before leaving, he turned, one last time. Victoria. She looked at him. Thank you for seeing me. She didn't respond, just nodded. Nathan left, descended the porch steps, crossed the garden, opened the gate, returned to the car. But before starting the engine, he looked at the cabin one last time. Victoria was at the window, watching. Their eyes met once more through the fog, and Nathan knew, with frightening certainty, that this encounter had changed everything. Neither of them would ever be the same after that first real look. Outside, the sound of the engine faded into the mountains. Victoria stood in the living room, staring at the card on the table. The wind moved the curtain, and for an instant, she thought she smelled him in the air. And in that subtle aroma of expensive cologne and cold wood, something in her awakened. Not love yet, but the memory that the heart could beat again. Victoria didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Every time she opened them, the silence seemed to speak his name. She stayed awake until late, lying in bed, staring at the wooden ceiling, reliving every second of that encounter. Nathan's voice, the way he looked at her. The words nobody had ever said, the look of someone who's lost everything but still chooses to stand. She ran a hand over her face, exhausted. She didn't want to think about him, didn't want to feel this again, that tightness in her chest, that strange desire to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still something beyond the pain, but it was too late. Nathan Porter had entered her life, and now he occupied space. The next day, Victoria woke earlier than usual, made coffee, tried to read but couldn't concentrate. She walked around the cabin aimlessly, restless, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, anticipation, and she hated admitting it. That's when she heard the sound of an engine. Victoria stopped in the middle of the living room, heart racing. For a second, she thought the sound was just memory, that it was imagination, not reality, but it wasn't. She walked to the window and saw the black car parking in front of the gate. Nathan got out, wearing a dark sweater and jeans, less formal than the day before but still elegant. And he was carrying something in his hands. Flowers. A simple bouquet of white hydrangeas. Victoria felt her chest tighten. He rang the bell. She took a deep breath, tried to compose herself, ran her hands through her hair, and went to the gate. When she opened it, their eyes met. "Good morning," Nathan said with a hesitant half-smile. Victoria crossed her arms, trying to seem irritated but couldn't. "You came back. I said I would." "No, you didn't." Nathan laughed softly. "Then I'm saying it now." Victoria looked at the flowers. He followed her gaze and extended the bouquet. "For you." I thought you deserved flowers." Victoria stood there for a moment, not knowing what to say. It had been so long since anyone had given her flowers, so long since anyone had made a simple gesture like this, without ulterior motives, just because. She took the bouquet slowly, smelling the soft scent of hydrangeas. His fingers brushed hers, a brief touch, but enough to mess up both their breathing. "Thank you," she murmured. Nathan shoved his hands in his pockets, as if not knowing what to do with them. "Can I come in? Just for a few minutes. I promise not to take much of your time." Victoria hesitated. Yesterday she'd asked for time to think, and now he was here again the next day, insisting. Part of her wanted to send him away, but another part, the part that woke up that morning wanted to hear what he had to say. "Okay," she said finally. "Oh, come in." They sat on the porch this time. Victoria put the flowers in a makeshift vase and brought 2 cups of coffee. Nathan accepted gratefully and was silent for a moment, just looking at the fog-covered mountains. "It's beautiful here," he said. "It's quiet," Victoria corrected. "Is that what you need? Silence?" Victoria took a sip of coffee. "I needed to forget." "Silence helps." Nathan nodded as if he understood perfectly. "And did it work? Were you able to forget?" Victoria looked at him. There was something in his voice. It wasn't judgment. It was genuine curiosity, as if he really wanted to understand. "No," she admitted, "but here it hurts less." Nathan was silent for a moment, then put his cup on the table and turned to her. "Victoria, I know yesterday I talked about the campaign, about the brand, about business, but today I came here for another reason." Victoria frowned. "What reason?" Nathan took a deep breath. "I came here because I need you to understand that this isn't just work for me." Victoria felt her heart accelerate. "Nathan, let me finish," he interrupted, gentle but firm. When I saw you on that magazine cover 5 years ago, something changed. I can't explain it right. It wasn't just your beauty. It was you. The way you looked at the camera, as if you were challenging the world to break you. And I saw it, Victoria. I saw the pain you carried even before I knew your story. Victoria swallowed hard. You didn't know me. I know. But somehow I recognized you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked quickly. She didn't want to cry in front of him. Nathan continued. The campaign I want to do isn't about fashion, Victoria. It's about rebirth, about showing that it's possible to survive pain, that it's possible to lose everything and still stand, that it's possible to... He paused. And you're the only person in the world who can represent that. Because you lived it. Victoria looked away, her voice coming out shaky. I don't know if I can... Why not? Because going back to that world is like opening a door I locked a long time ago, and I'm afraid of what will come in if I open it again. Nathan leaned forward, eyes fixed on hers. What if it's not about opening doors? What if it's about creating new ones? Victoria looked at him, confused. What do you mean? You don't have to go back to what you were, Victoria. You can create something new. Something that's just yours. This campaign can be however you want it. No pressure, no fakeness. Just you. Victoria felt something move inside her chest. A dangerous desire to believe. And if I don't know who I am anymore? Nathan smiled, a sad smile, but true. Then find out during the process. No rush. No judgment. The silence enveloped them. Victoria looked at her hands, at the coffee cooling in the cup, at the flowers he brought, and she realized, for the first time, that maybe Nathan wasn't there just because of the campaign. Maybe he was there because he recognized in her something that also lived inside him. Loneliness. Why are you really here, Nathan? She asked, her voice low. He hesitated. And then, for the first time, he told the complete truth. Because for 5 years I've been carrying you with me, and I need to know if what I feel is real or if I created an illusion of something that never existed. Victoria held her breath. He stopped, his voice failing for the first time, as if saying it more to himself than to her. I never knew how to love, Victoria. My mother abandoned me when I was a child, and since then I learned not to trust anyone, not to feel anything. But you made me feel something I thought I'd never feel. Victoria looked into his eyes and saw the truth. Raw, naked, frightening. He wasn't there just for the campaign. He was there for her. I don't know if I can give you what you're looking for, Victoria said, her voice trembling. I'm not asking for anything beyond what you can give, Nathan replied. I just want a chance to truly know you, without masks, without performances. Victoria closed her eyes. The rational part of her screamed to refuse, to send him away, to protect herself. But the part that woke up that morning, the part that felt her heart beat again when she smelled his cologne in the air, wanted to accept, wanted to try, even with fear. Even with guilt. She opened her eyes. Okay, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I accept. Nathan's eyes widened in surprise. Accept the campaign. I accept doing the campaign. He let out the air he'd been holding, a relieved smile appearing on his face. Really? Victoria nodded, trying not to let the fear win. But with one condition. Anything. Everything happens here. I'm not going back to Los Angeles. I don't want strange photographers, giant teams, none of that. If we're going to do this, it's my way. Nathan smiled. It wasn't just relief, it was admiration. Then we do it your way. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. And for the first time since she buried her husband, she felt something beyond pain. She felt hope. Small, fragile, but real. And for the first time in a long time, the sun broke through the fog and reached the porch. 3 days later, Nathan called. Victoria was in the kitchen preparing tea when the phone rang. She looked at the screen and felt her heart race when she saw his name. She hesitated for a second, 2, 3, then answered, "Hello, Victoria." His voice came through the line, deep and warm. "Sorry to bother you. I know you asked for time, but I was thinking." "Thinking about what?" "About dinner." Victoria frowned. "What dinner?" Nathan laughed softly, a sound that did something strange to her stomach. "The dinner I want to have with you. To talk more about the campaign, about next steps." Victoria bit her lip. She knew it wasn't just about the campaign, but she pretended to believe it. "Nathan, I don't know if—" "Please," he interrupted, gentle but insistent. "Just dinner. Right there at your place. I'll bring the food, you just have to show up." Victoria laughed despite herself. "You're persistent. Only when it's worth it." The silence settled between them. Victoria knew she should refuse, that she should keep her distance, that this was starting to become dangerous. But there was something in his voice, something that made her want to say yes. "Okay," she said finally. "But nothing too elaborate, okay? I don't want anything." "Nothing elaborate," Nathan promised. "Just the two of us talking." Victoria hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, her heart beating too fast. What was she doing? Nathan arrived at dusk. The sky was painted orange and pink, the fog beginning to descend over the mountains. He carried a brown paper bag with food and a bottle of red wine. Victoria opened the door before he rang the bell. She was wearing a simple grey wool dress, hair loose falling over her shoulders. No makeup, no effort. And still, Nathan needed a second to remember to breathe. "Hi," she said with a half-smile on her lips. "Hi," he replied, his voice coming out lower than he intended. Victoria stepped aside, letting him in. "What did you bring?" Nathan lifted the bag. "Mushroom risotto, Italian bread, and wine." Victoria arched an eyebrow. "You cooked?" "I said it wouldn't be elaborate. I didn't say it would be bad." She laughed, a real laugh. Light. That lit up her face in a way Nathan had never seen. And he knew in that exact moment that he was completely lost. They had dinner on the porch. Victoria lit candles, set the table with simple plates, and the two sat facing each other as night fell over Aspen. The risotto was perfect, the wine even better. But what really changed the night was the conversation. At first they talked about safe things, the campaign, the photos, the concept Nathan had in mind. Victoria listened, asked questions, seemed genuinely interested. But then, after the second glass of wine, the conversation shifted. "Can I ask you a question?" Nathan said, eyes fixed on hers. Victoria hesitated but nodded. "You can." "Why did you really stop working? Was it just because of grief, or was there something more?" Victoria was silent for a moment, ran her finger along the rim of the glass, thinking, "I always hated it," she admitted finally. Nathan frowned. "What?" "The industry, the cameras, the constant pressure to be perfect all the time. I got into that world because I needed money. My family was poor, I had to help, and suddenly I was in Paris, in Milan, making more money than I ever imagined possible." She took a sip of wine. "But I was never happy there. I always felt empty, like I was living someone else's life." Nathan watched her, absorbing every word. "And your husband, did he make you happy?" Victoria smiled. A sad smile, but true. "He saved me. Not in a romantic way like in the movies. But he saw me. Really saw me. Not the model, not the image. Just Victoria." She stopped, her eyes shining with contained tears. And when he died, I lost the only person who made me feel human. Nathan felt his chest tighten. He reached his hand across the table, stopping a few inches from hers. "I see you, Victoria." She looked at his hand, so close, so dangerously close. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "You see who you want me to be." "No," Nathan insisted. "I see who you are, and that's exactly why I'm here." Their eyes met, and the air changed, became dense, loaded, inevitable. Victoria looked away first, picking up her wine glass as a shield. "Tell me about you," she said, changing the subject. "Why have you never married?" Nathan pulled his hand back, respecting the distance she needed. "Because I never found anyone worth the risk." And now, he smiled, a sad smile, but honest. "Now I found her, but she doesn't know yet if she wants to let me in." Victoria held her breath. He was talking about her, obviously talking about her, and the scariest part was that she wanted to let him in. But she couldn't. Not yet. Maybe never. The conversation continued, flowing between memories and comfortable silences. They talked about childhood, about dreams that died, about scars that hadn't healed. Nathan told her about the mother who abandoned him. Victoria told him about the father who never believed in her. And with each word, the distance between them decreased, until in a moment of shared laughter, their hands touched. It was accidental. Victoria was gesturing. He was reaching for the wine bottle. Their fingers met in the middle and stopped. Neither moved. The touch was light, almost nothing, but enough to set everything on fire. Victoria looked at his hand on hers, felt the warmth, felt the weight, felt something inside her awaken, something dangerous, something she'd sworn never to feel again. Desire. She pulled her hand back as if she'd been burned. I need to, she started, but didn't finish the sentence. She stood from the chair, heart racing, breathing uneven. Nathan stood too, concerned. "Victoria, are you okay?" "I just need a minute," she said, backing toward the door. "I'm sorry. And before he could say anything, she went inside the cabin. Nathan stood on the porch, alone, hearing the sound of her footsteps retreating. He didn't go after her. He knew she needed space, but he also knew, with absolute certainty, that something had changed. He had ignited something inside her, something she didn't want to admit, but that was there, alive, pulsing. Inside the cabin, Victoria leaned against the living room wall, hand on her chest, trying to control her breathing. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. She closed her eyes and saw her husband's face, his laugh. The way he held her hand, and then she felt the guilt, that devastating guilt that had haunted her since he died. How could she feel this? How could she want another man's hand when her husband's hand was still so vivid in her memory? It was a betrayal. It was wrong. It was... But then she remembered the conversation, the laughter, the way Nathan looked at her, as if she were the most important thing in the world. And for the first time, Victoria wondered if maybe, just maybe, starting over wasn't betraying her husband's memory. Maybe it was honoring it, because he never would have wanted her to stay trapped in pain forever. She opened her eyes, took a deep breath, and went back to the porch. Nathan was still there, standing, waiting. When she appeared, he didn't say anything, just looked at her. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her voice low. "I'm still learning how to deal with this." Nathan took a step toward her, but stopped before invading her space. "You don't need to apologize. I understand." Victoria bit her lip. "You should go. It's late." Nathan nodded, but didn't move immediately. Victoria. Yes. Thank you for tonight. It was perfect. Victoria felt her chest tighten. For me too. Nathan smiled. Then, slowly, he walked to the door. But before leaving, he turned one last time. I'm not giving up on you. Victoria looked at him, eyes glistening. Maybe you should. Nathan shook his head. I can't. And then he was gone. Victoria stood on the porch, listening to the sound of his car fading into the fog, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She felt alive. 1 week later, the team arrived. They came in small numbers. Just enough to work, small enough not to frighten her. The smell of new fabric and raw linen filled the room. It was a small crew, as Victoria requested, just a photographer, Derek, a discreet British man who'd worked with Nathan for years, and an assistant to handle lighting and wardrobe. Nathan transformed the living room into a makeshift studio. Soft lights, reflectors strategically positioned. A simple white backdrop mounted against the wooden wall. Nothing ostentatious, nothing invasive. Just enough for the light to do the work. Victoria was in the bedroom wearing the first look, a beige linen dress, fluid, simple, no jewelry, almost no makeup, just Victoria, no armor. She looked at her own reflection in the mirror and felt something strange in her chest. It had been so long since she'd done this. So long since she'd seen herself as anything beyond a broken widow. She took a deep breath, ran her hands through her hair, and left the bedroom. When she entered the living room, the air changed. Derek froze mid-click without realizing it. The assistant held her breath. And Nathan looked at her as if he were seeing something sacred. You're beautiful, he said, his voice coming out lower than he intended. Victoria blushed slightly, looking away. Thank you. Derek broke the silence, smiling broadly. Stunning, Victoria. Shall we begin? She nodded, trying to control her nervousness. The first clicks were tense. Victoria was stiff, uncomfortable, as if she'd forgotten how to do this. She posed, but without life, without soul. Derek stopped, concerned. Victoria, are you okay? She forced a smile. I'm fine. Just a little rusty. Nathan approached, stopped beside her. Close enough that his cologne and presence arrived before words. Forget the lens, he said gently. Just breathe. Just be here. Now. Victoria looked at him. Nathan's eyes were fixed on hers, calm, encouraging. And suddenly she relaxed. Okay, she whispered. Nathan stepped back, and Derek started photographing again. This time it was different. Victoria closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let the tension escape. When she opened her eyes again, she didn't pose. She breathed for the camera. With each click, she loosened more, moving naturally, smiling for real, letting the light reach her in a way it hadn't for years. Derek lowered the camera for a second and whispered to the assistant, "She's back." And Nathan watched everything. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, pretending to just be supervising. But the truth was he couldn't look away. Every expression of Victoria's disarmed him. Every movement made her more irresistible. He saw the exact moment she found herself again. It was subtle. A small smile that touched her eyes, a relaxation in her shoulders, a confidence that returned gradually, as if awakening from a long sleep. Victoria was being reborn. And he was witnessing it. Derek stopped to change the camera lens, and Victoria took the opportunity to drink some water. She looked at Nathan and smiled. "How's it looking?" Nathan took a step toward her. "Perfect. You're incredible." Victoria bit her lip, feeling her face warm. "I forgot what this was like. How it felt to feel beautiful again." Nathan stopped a few inches from her. so close she could smell his cologne. So close the air became heavy. "It's not beauty," he said, his voice low. "It's you being present. The camera senses that." Their eyes met, and for a moment, nothing else existed. Not the camera, not the team, not the past. Just them. "Ready to continue?" Derek called, breaking the moment. Victoria blinked, coming back to reality. Took a step back, creating distance. "Yes, let's go." The shoot continued through the afternoon. They changed wardrobe several times. A cashmere sweater, a silk blouse, a simple but elegant black dress. With each change, Victoria became more comfortable, more herself, until Derek suggested something different. "What if we go outside a bit? Photograph out there with natural light." Victoria hesitated. Going outside meant exposing herself beyond the cabin, beyond her refuge. But then she looked at Nathan. He nodded, encouraging. "Only if you want to." Victoria took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do it." They went out to the garden. The afternoon was fading, the golden light of sunset painting everything in warm tones. The fog had lifted, leaving the pines visible, imposing around the property. Outside, the golden light drew margins on her face. Derek followed. Victoria walked slowly, touching the tree trunks, looking at the sky. And for the first time, Nathan saw something that made him forget to breathe. Victoria wasn't posing. She was just being free, being alive, being everything he'd imagined 5 years ago when he saw that look for the first time. He approached slowly, without realizing. Derek captured everything. The exchanged glances, the silent tension, the way Nathan looked at Victoria, as if she were the only real thing in the world. "Nathan," Derek called, remembering the creative brief. In the original concept, there was a test for a double shot. Short frame. Energy of support and embrace, not romance. "Come in for a second. Energy test. It's a campaign. Sometimes support communicates rebirth better than solo." Nathan frowned. "I don't. This is about her." "Just one," Derek insisted. Victoria looked at Nathan, hesitant. "You don't have to if you don't want to." But Nathan was already walking toward her. "It's fine. Just one." He stopped beside Victoria, maintaining a respectful distance. But Derek shook his head. No, closer. You need to look connected." Nathan took a step, stood beside her so close their shoulders almost touched. Victoria felt her heart race. "Look at her, Nathan," Derek instructed. "Like she's the only thing that matters." Nathan obeyed, turned slightly and looked at Victoria, and he didn't need to pretend, because she was the only thing that mattered. Victoria felt his gaze like a physical touch, warm, intense, inevitable. "Victoria, turn your face until you find him," Derek said. Anna turned slowly. Their eyes met. The photo happened on its own. Click. Victoria looked away first, breathing deeply, trying to control the chaos inside her chest. Nathan stepped back, running a hand through his hair, equally shaken. Derek lowered the camera with a half smile. "That's the one. There's a story there." When the team left, Victoria and Nathan were alone on the porch. The sun had set completely, leaving only the soft glow of stars and the yellow light from the cabin. Victoria was sitting in a chair, still wearing the last outfit, the simple black dress. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, a little messy from the wind. Nathan was leaning against the porch railing, looking at the mountains. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was loaded. "Thank you," Victoria said finally. "For today, for reminding me who I am." Nathan turned to her. "You didn't need me for that. You just needed to allow yourself." Victoria smiled, but there was sadness there. I was so afraid to come back. I thought it would be painful, but it wasn't. It was liberating. Nathan took a step toward her. You deserve to feel free, Victoria. You deserve to live again. Victoria looked at him, really looked at the man who had somehow entered her life and turned everything upside down. Why do you do this? She asked, her voice low. What? Look at me like I'm more than I am. Nathan knelt in front of her, eyes level with hers now. Because you are, Victoria. You're so much more than you imagine. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be. I don't want you to be anything beyond what you already are, Nathan said, his voice firm but gentle. I just want you to allow yourself to feel again. Victoria held her breath. His hand was close to hers, so close. She looked at that hand, and then, slowly, she extended hers. Their fingers touched, and this time, neither pulled back. They stayed like that, in silence, hands intertwined, hearts beating out of sync. When their fingers intertwined, the cabin became too small for so much contained desire. And in that moment, both knew there was no going back. The tension that had been building, subtle and inevitable, had reached the breaking point, and soon something would have to give. In the distance, thunder rumbled. The mountains held their silence. The sky made promises. 2 days later, the sound of an engine broke the mountain silence. The same sound that, without realizing it, she was already expecting to hear. Nathan appeared at the end of the afternoon, carrying a bottle of wine, and that half-smile that had become dangerously familiar. There was no scheduled shoot, no professional excuse. He simply came. Victoria opened the door and didn't pretend surprise. Don't you have anything else to do in Denver? Nathan shrugged. I do, but I'd rather be here. Victoria shook her head, trying to hide the smile, but the corner of her mouth betrayed her. The kind of smile that comes before admitting something has already changed. Come in, but don't expect anything elaborate. I didn't cook. I didn't come for the food. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something neither dared to name. They sat on the porch with glasses of wine, watching the sky change. The afternoon was strange, the air heavy, loaded with humidity. Clouds accumulated over the mountains, swallowing the golden light of sunset. It's going to rain, Victoria said, looking up. You should go before it starts. The road gets dangerous. Nathan took a sip of wine, unhurried. I'm not afraid of rain. Victoria looked at him sideways. You should be. Up here in the mountains. The storms are violent. Then it's good I'm in good company. Victoria laughed despite herself. There was something different about that day, something lighter, looser, as if both had lowered their defenses without realizing it. They talked about trivial things, about songs that marked eras, about bad movies they loved, about childhood memories that seemed to belong to other lives, and with each shared story, the distance between them decreased until the first drop fell, then the second. The wind rose up the mountain like a warning. The clouds opened with a crack of thunder, and then, suddenly, the sky opened. The rain came with force, violent and cold, beating on the porch roof like uneven drums. The wind shook the pines, and in seconds, everything around became a curtain of water. Victoria stood, laughing. I warned you. Nathan stood too, but he didn't look worried. He looked fascinated. He looked at her for too long to be just admiration. It was something between reverence and desire, the kind of look that makes the soul tremble before the body. The way she laughed at the storm, the way her hair moved with the wind, the brightness in her eyes, alive, real, free. And then he whispered, almost without realizing, "You're beautiful like this." Victoria stopped laughing, looked at him. Like what? Like this, alive, without fear. Victoria felt her heart accelerate. Took a step toward him without realizing. "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice low, almost swallowed by the sound of rain. Nathan took a step too. "Of what?" "Of you. Of what you make me feel." The words came out before she could hold them back. They were close now. So close she could see the raindrops splashing on his face. So close she could feel the heat emanating from his body, contrasting with the cold of the storm. "And what do I make you feel?" Nathan asked, his voice hoarse. Victoria held her breath. For a second, she seemed to search for the right word. And then, in an almost invisible whisper, "Alive." The word came out like a confession, like surrender. And it was everything Nathan needed to hear. He raised his hand slowly. His fingers touched her face with a delicacy that contrasted with the violence of the storm around them. His thumb traced the line of her cheek, as if memorizing every detail. Victoria closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the touch, to feel the warmth, to feel the desire she'd tried to bury for so long. When she opened her eyes, Nathan was closer, his lips inches from hers, both their breathing uneven, the entire world reduced to that tiny space between them. "Victoria," he whispered, her name sounding like a prayer. She didn't respond, just leaned forward slightly, closing the distance, eyes closing again. Heart beating so loud she was certain he could hear it. Time suspended. The sound of rain seemed to be the only rhythm between them. Their lips were about to touch when, crack! A thunder exploded above them, so loud and sudden that Victoria jumped back, bringing her hand to her chest. The lightning flash illuminated everything for a second. Victoria's wide eyes, Nathan's frustrated expression, the rain falling like blades around them. And then the darkness returned. Victoria started to laugh. First, a trembling sound, then whole, free, as if the laughter opened the throat that fear had closed. Nathan looked at her incredulous for a second, and then he started laughing too. They laughed together like old friends, like children caught in mischief. Like two people who understood in that absurd moment that the universe was literally conspiring against them. "Seriously?" Victoria said between laughs. "Now? The thunder had to be now?" Nathan ran a hand through his wet hair, still laughing. "Apparently the world doesn't want this to happen. Or it's giving us time to think." Nathan took a step toward her again, the smile still on his lips but his eyes serious. "I've already thought too much, Victoria. For 5 years. Victoria felt the laughter die in her throat. The weight of those words hit her like a second thunder. 5 years. He'd carried this for 5 years. She looked at him. Really looked at the man who had appeared at her door weeks ago as a stranger, but who now occupied every corner of her mind, who had seen the broken parts of her and hadn't run. Who looked at her as if she were the most important thing in the world. And for the first time, Victoria allowed herself to admit the truth. She wanted this too. Wanted that kiss. Wanted those hands. Wanted to feel alive again. Not just existing, but living. But the fear was still there. Whispering. Reminding. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling. Nathan took another step. Stopped so close she had to raise her face to look into his eyes. "Then I'll wait." Victoria felt her eyes burn. "And if you wait forever?" Nathan smiled, a sad smile, but true. "Then at least I'll have waited for something worth it." Victoria let out a trembling sigh, closed her eyes, feeling tears mix with the raindrops splashing on her face. When she opened her eyes again, Nathan was still there. waiting, as he'd promised. She extended her hand and touched his face slowly, hesitant, like someone touching something precious. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." Nathan held her hand against his own face. "I'll never give up, Victoria." They stayed like that for a long moment, hands intertwined, faces close, hearts beating in the same uneven rhythm. The rain continued falling. Thunder still echoed in the distance. But there, in that small space between them, there was something bigger than the storm. There was promise, there was hope, and there was, for the first time, the possibility of something neither dared to name yet: love. When the rain finally diminished, Nathan knew he should go. But neither moved. They stayed on the porch until late, sitting side by side, shoulders touching, watching the fog return to cover the mountains. "Can you stay?" Victoria said suddenly, her voice low, almost shy. Nathan looked at her, surprised. "In the guest room," she clarified. "The road is dangerous, and I don't want you driving like this." Nathan smiled. "Are you sure?" Victoria nodded without looking at him. "I'm sure." Nathan took her hand and squeezed gently. "Then I'll stay." But both knew it wasn't just about the road. It was about not wanting him to leave. About wanting him to stay close. About starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to feel accompanied again. That night, while the storm calmed outside, something inside Victoria also began to calm. The fear was still there, but for the first time, it wasn't alone. It was accompanied by something stronger: courage. Outside, the mountains exhaled vapor. Inside her chest did the same. As if, finally, something dormant was breathing again. 3 days after the storm, Victoria called. Her voice came through the line with a hesitation Nathan knew well. The same hesitation that preceded each step she took toward him. "The photos are ready," she said. "Do you want to come see them?" Nathan closed his eyes, holding the phone tighter than necessary. "When?" "Tonight, if you can." He could. Of course he could. "I'll be there in 2 hours." Nathan arrived when the sun had already set. The cabin was silent, only the yellow light from the windows cutting through the mountain darkness. He stopped for a moment before ringing the bell, breathing deeply, trying to control the whirlwind inside his chest. Something had changed after the rain, after the almost kiss interrupted. After spending the night in the guest room, hearing the sounds of the cabin, knowing she was there, so close and so far at the same time, something had broken between them, an invisible barrier that now let everything through. The desire, the vulnerability, the raw truth that neither could hide anymore. He rang the bell. Victoria opened the door seconds later. She was wearing a gray wool sweater, sweatpants, hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, no armor. And still, he needed to remember to breathe. "Hi," she said with a half smile on her lips. "Hi." She stepped aside, letting him in. But when he passed, their bodies brushed lightly, and it was like electricity. The photos were spread out on the coffee table in the living room. Victoria had prepared tea, 2 steaming cups, the soft aroma of chamomile filling the space. They sat on the sofa, side by side. Close, but not touching yet. Nathan picked up the first photo and felt something tighten inside his chest. It was Victoria, but not the Victoria from the runways. It was the real Victoria, alive, with that look that had captured him 5 years ago. Except now he saw something more. Hope. He went through the second photo, the third, each image more beautiful than the last. "They're perfect," he said, his voice coming out lower than he intended. Victoria looked at her own hands, fingers intertwined, nervous. "I almost didn't recognize myself when I saw them. It's like I came back to exist." Nathan put the photo back on the table and turned to her. "You always existed, Victoria. You were just hiding." She looked at him, and there was something different in her eyes, something that made the air change. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me find myself again." Nathan felt his heart race. "You don't need to thank me. I do. You appeared in my life when I'd given up on everything, and I don't know how, but you made me want to try again." Her words hung in the air, loaded, inevitable. Nathan took a step, not physical, but emotional. A step beyond the line he'd sworn not to cross until she was ready. "Victoria," he said, his voice hoarse, "I need to tell you something. Something I've kept for a long time." She looked at him expectantly. "What?" He took a deep breath. "I didn't come here because of the campaign. Not just because of that. I came because for 5 years I've been carrying you with me. 5 years that I've looked at that photo and wondered what it would be like to meet the woman behind that look. And now that I've found you, Victoria, now that I've truly known you." He stopped, his voice failing. Victoria held her breath. "Now what?" she whispered. Nathan turned completely to her. So close she could feel the heat emanating from him. "Now I can't pretend anymore that this is just work. I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel." Her eyes filled with tears. "Nathan, I know you're still scared. I know you still carry grief. And I swear, Victoria, I'll wait as long as you need, but I need you to know that—" "I feel it too," she interrupted. Nathan froze. Victoria let the tears flow without trying to hide them. "I feel it too, Nathan. It terrifies me because I swore I'd never feel this again, that I'd never allow myself to. But you—" She let out a trembling laugh. "You appeared and messed everything up." Nathan raised his hand slowly, hesitant, and touched her face. His fingers traced the line of her jaw. His thumb wiped away a tear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Victoria shook her head, leaning her face into his hand. "Don't apologize, not for making me feel alive again." And then, slowly, she leaned forward. Nathan held his breath. Didn't move. Let her choose. Let her take control. Victoria closed her eyes, brought her face so close he could feel her breath. And then, finally, after weeks of tension, of almost touches and almost kisses, their lips met. It was soft at first, hesitant, a touch that seemed to ask if it was allowed. The taste of chamomile was still on her lips, sweet, warm, familiar. Then Victoria sighed, a low sound, vulnerable. Nathan responded without thinking. The kiss deepened, warm, urgent, full of accumulated absence. His hand descended to her nape, fingers tangling in her hair. The other found the curve of her waist, pulling her closer as if the body remembered what the soul already knew. Victoria surrendered. Her hands rose up his chest, feeling his racing heart beneath her palm. She pulled him closer, as if wanting to eliminate any space between them. The kiss was dense, contained, but loaded with everything that had remained unsaid. It was pain transforming into desire, grief transforming into life, fear transforming into courage. It was 5 years of waiting for him. It was a 1.5 years of solitude for her. It was inevitable. When they separated, the air seemed too dense. Their lips still brushed in involuntary goodbye. That small, lazy touch that comes after a kiss that changes everything. Nathan pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, trying to breathe again inside the same body. Neither said anything for a long moment. They just breathed together, hearts beating in the same uneven rhythm. And then Victoria opened her eyes slowly, and saw tears in his eyes too. She raised her hand and touched his face with the same delicacy he'd used with her. "Stay with me," she whispered. It wasn't a request. It was a choice. Nathan smiled, a trembling smile, but true, and kissed her again, slower this time, softer, but no less intense, a kiss of confirmation, of promise, of surrender. When they separated again, Nathan pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, still breathless, "I love you." Victoria felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from something bigger, something she thought she'd never feel again. "Me too," she whispered back. "Why, I love you too." They stayed like that for hours, on the sofa, intertwined, kissing slowly, as if they had all the time in the world, talking in whispers, laughing softly, sometimes crying. Nathan held her face with such delicacy, as if she were made of glass. Victoria traced lines on his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked at some point, his voice hoarse. "Are you sure you want this?" Victoria looked into his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, there was no doubt. "I'm sure. I'm sure of you." Nathan smiled. A beautiful smile, illuminated, free, and kissed her again. When the night was already advanced, they went up to the bedroom together, not with haste, not with urgency, but with the certainty that this was right, that it was the moment. Victoria stopped at the bedroom door and looked at him. Nathan took her hand and intertwined their fingers. "Always," he said. And when the door closed behind them, the mountains outside seemed to whisper a blessing. Inside, the silence was different, the kind of silence that exists after a fulfilled promise. Fear had yielded, pain had transformed, and two hearts had finally found the way back home, to love. The night had a different silence. It wasn't the silence of solitude Victoria knew so well. It was another kind, full, warm, alive. They had dinner in the kitchen, nothing elaborate, just simple pasta, red wine, candles. Victoria lit without thinking much. The rain returned to fall outside. Soft this time, like a distant melody. They talked about everything and nothing. About his childhood, about her dreams. About the small things that build a life, morning coffee, favorite songs, the right way to make bread. And with each word exchanged, with each look that extended a second longer, something grew between them, something inevitable. When they finished eating, Nathan stood to wash the dishes. Victoria approached, picked up a dish towel and started drying. They worked side by side, shoulders touching occasionally. The comfortable silence settling in until Victoria stopped. She looked at her own hands, and then at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice low. Nathan frowned, confused. "For what?" "For being here, for making me feel like it's okay to start over." Nathan put down the plate he was holding and turned completely to her. "Victoria, let me finish," she interrupted, gentle but firm. Nathan nodded. She raised her hand and touched his face slowly, as if memorizing every detail. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "but for the first time, the desire is bigger than the fear." His heart raced before his body did. "Are you sure?" Victoria nodded, eyes shining in the candlelight. I'm sure of you." And then she kissed him. It wasn't like the previous kisses. This one had something different. It had decision. It had surrender. Nathan pulled her closer, hands on her waist, fingers pressing gently against the fabric of the sweater. Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck, her body molding to his as if it had always belonged there. When they separated, both were breathless. "Come," Victoria whispered, taking his hand and leading him out of the kitchen. The bedroom was immersed in shadows. Only the soft moonlight entering through the window, drawing shadows on the wooden walls. Victoria stopped at the foot of the bed and turned to him. For a moment, neither moved. They just looked at each other, and in that look, there was everything. Fear, desire, hope, promise. Nathan took a step forward, raised his hand and touched her face with such delicacy that Victoria felt her eyes burn. "I love you," he said. Simple, true. Victoria smiled, tears falling silently. "I love you too." And then, slowly, she pulled her own sweater up. The fabric slid over her skin, revealing the body she'd hidden for so long. Not the body from the runways, but the real body, with invisible scars, with stories written in every curve. Nathan looked at her as if he was seeing something sacred. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Her chest closed in an impulse of tenderness. Acceptance. She took a step forward and began unbuttoning his shirt, one by one, slowly, without haste. When the shirt fell to the floor, she placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and fast. "You too," she said, and pulled him to the bed. The bedroom fell silent. The breathing of the two was the only sound, the distance between them minimal. The world seemed to wait together. There was no haste, just the urgency to exist in the same instant. Their bodies sought each other like those seeking shelter. Without urgency, only necessity, hands spoke before mouths. Touch drew slow paths, deciphering breaths, recognizing tremors. The air smelled of wine, of skin, of promise. Victoria closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel the weight of him over her, the heat spreading, slow, inevitable, the way he touched her, with reverence, with care, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. And for the first time in over a year, Victoria didn't feel guilt, just her own body, alive, warm, whole, reminding her it still knew how to love. She wasn't betraying her husband's memory. She was honoring her own life. Nathan whispered her name once, twice, like a prayer. And when their bodies finally met, the world seemed to stop. Time was suspended between breaths. There was no past, no future, just that moment, that touch, that love that was born improbably, but was now the most real thing both had ever felt. Victoria opened her eyes and found his, and saw tears. She raised her hand and touched his face, wiping away a tear with her thumb. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Nathan smiled, a trembling smile, but true. "For the first time in my life, I'm whole." Her chest closed. She pulled his face close and kissed him, deep, slow, eternal. And as they moved together in the rhythm ancient and new at the same time, something inside both of them healed. Nathan's solitude found company. Victoria's pain found peace. And there, between sheets and unspoken promises, they surrendered completely, without fear, without guilt, just love. When everything calmed, they lay intertwined, breaths still uneven. Nathan pulled the sheet over both and embraced Victoria from behind, face buried in her hair, arm around her waist. Victoria held his hand and pulled it close to her heart. "Will you stay?" she asked, her voice sleepy. Nathan kissed her shoulder. "Always." Victoria smiled. And for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep without nightmares, without the weight of grief, without the solitude that haunted her. Just with the feeling of being home. in the arms of someone who truly loved her. When dawn came, the mountains were covered in fog. The soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting everything in golden tones. Victoria woke first, opened her eyes slowly, disoriented for a second. But then she felt the weight of Nathan's arm around her, the warmth of his body against hers, and she remembered everything. She turned her face slowly and found him sleeping, face serene, relaxed, free of all the masks he wore in the world outside. Victoria raised her hand and touched his face with delicacy, tracing the line of his jaw, the contour of his lips. Nathan opened his eyes slowly, and when he saw her, he smiled. A beautiful smile, illuminated. Happy. "Good morning," he whispered, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Good morning," she replied. He pulled her closer and kissed her. A soft kiss, lazy, full of promises. When they separated, Nathan pressed his forehead to hers. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Victoria took a deep breath, searching for the answer within herself, and found something she didn't expect. "Peace. I feel at peace." It was true. Nathan smiled and kissed her forehead. "Me too." They stayed like that for a few more minutes, intertwined, silent, just existing together. And as the morning advanced outside, inside that bedroom, something new had been born. It wasn't just love, it was belonging. Victoria was no longer the widow trapped in the past. Nathan was no longer the lonely man who didn't know how to love. They were simply two hearts that had found each other in pain and chose healing. Two bodies that recognized each other as home. And while the world continued spinning outside, there inside, time had stopped. Forever. Or at least enough for love to become living memory. The peace lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks where the world seemed to have forgotten about them. And perhaps that's why the blow came without warning. 2 weeks of breakfast together, of quiet laughter in the kitchen. Of nights intertwined, discovering every detail about each other, like someone deciphering a new language. Victoria had begun to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world could leave them alone. But she should have known better. The past never forgets. The first sign was Nathan's phone ringing non-stop. It was a Saturday morning. They were on the porch having coffee when his phone started vibrating insistently on the table. The phone vibrated without stopping. Nathan picked up the device. Dozens of notifications, calls, messages, emails, a flood, all from Porter & Stone's communications team. "What's wrong?" Victoria asked, noticing the change in his expression. Nathan opened one of the messages, read it, and felt his blood freeze. "Nathan!" Victoria leaned forward, worried. He raised his eyes to her, face pale. "Someone leaked the campaign photos. And they found out about us." Victoria held her breath. "What do you mean?" Nathan scrolled through his phone. "A photographer must have followed us. There are pictures of us on the porch, in the garden, embracing." He turned the phone toward her. Victoria looked at the screen and felt the world collapse. It was a photo of her and Nathan on the porch of the cabin. She was in his arms, laughing, face pressed against his chest. The image was intimate, private, stolen, and it was everywhere. The headlines were worse. "Victoria Lane returns. Supermodel reappears after grief, alongside billionaire CEO. Nathan Porter and Victoria Lane, the secret mountain romance. The widow and the tycoon, love or opportunism." Victoria dropped the phone as if it were burning. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Nathan stood immediately and went to her, kneeling in front of her chair. "Victoria, breathe. It's okay. I'll fix this." "It's not okay." She stood abruptly, moving away from him. "They're exposing everything. They're turning this into a spectacle. I ran from this. I came here to escape the cameras, the judgments, everyone wanting a piece of me. And now they found me again. Nathan took a step toward her, but she backed away. Victoria, please. I can't do this again, Nathan. I can't. In the following hours, the situation worsened. Victoria's phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, journalists, producers. People she hadn't seen in years, suddenly wanting to reconnect. Social media exploded. Old photos of her resurfaced, before and after comparisons. Speculation about the relationship. Cruel comments about her replacing her dead husband so quickly. Victoria turned off her phone, closed the curtains, locked herself in the bedroom. But she couldn't escape the noise inside her own head. You don't deserve to be happy. You forgot him so quickly. You're a fraud. Outside, Nathan knocked on the door. Victoria, please, open the door. Let's talk. Inside, the only sound was tears falling on the wooden floor, and her heart trying to learn to breathe again. Victoria, I love you. We'll get through this together. Just let me in. More silence, until he heard the low sound of sobs from the other side of the door. Nathan pressed his forehead against the wood, hand splayed against the surface, as if he could reach her through it. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have protected you better. But I swear, Victoria, I'll fix this. I swear. Inside, Victoria was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees, crying silently. She wanted to believe him, but the fear was bigger. The fear of being devoured again, of losing control of her own life, of becoming just a headline, a face, a story everyone thought they had the right to comment on. That night, Nathan had to go back to Denver. An emergency meeting with the legal team. Measures to control the damage, lawsuits to file. He didn't want to leave her alone. But Victoria insisted. Go, she said, her voice emotionless. I need time alone anyway. Nathan held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. I'll be back tomorrow morning. You hear me? I'll be back, and we'll solve this together. Victoria just nodded, but said nothing. When he left, she locked the door and stood in the middle of the living room, listening to the sound of his car fading into the fog. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't comfortable. It was suffocating. Victoria spent the night awake, walking around the cabin, looking at the photos spread out on the table. The photos from the shoot that were supposed to be just theirs, but that now the whole world had seen and judged. She picked up a photo of herself, the one where she was laughing, free, alive. And she barely recognized that woman. Who did I think I was? She thought. How did I think I could just start over? As if the past wouldn't catch up with me. As if I deserved this. The guilt returned, heavy, crushing. Her husband's voice echoed in her mind. Promise me you'll live, Victoria. Promise you won't bury yourself with me. But how could she live when the world seemed determined to punish her for trying? When the sun began to rise, Victoria made a decision. She couldn't do this, couldn't drag Nathan into the chaos of her life, couldn't turn him into a headline, into a joke, into another victim of her inability to escape her own past. He deserved more, deserved someone who didn't come with such heavy baggage. Someone who could stand beside him without turning everything into scandal. She grabbed a suitcase, threw some clothes inside, her hand trembling so much she could barely form the letters. She wrote a short note, hand shaking. Nathan, I'm sorry, I tried. I swear I tried, but I can't drag you into the chaos that follows me. You deserve peace, and I still don't know how to live without hiding. Forgive me for not being strong enough. I love you, but maybe loving you isn't enough. Take care of yourself. Victoria. She left the note on the coffee table, next to the photos, grabbed her suitcase, the car keys, and left before she could change her mind. Outside, the mountains still slept, wrapped in fog and regret. Nathan arrived the next morning with flowers and fresh coffee. He'd spent the entire night solving problems, filing lawsuits, making sure the photos were taken down. He was tired, but relieved, because now he could go back to her and say everything was under control, that they'd be okay. He rang the bell. Nobody answered. He frowned, got the key she'd given him weeks ago and opened the door. Victoria. Silence. Victoria, it's me. I brought coffee. Nothing. He entered the empty cabin, cold, and then he saw the note on the table. Nathan dropped the flowers on the floor, picked up the paper with trembling hands, read it once, twice, 3 times. The sound of the words seemed to scream inside the silence. And then, what was left of him collapsed. Nathan fell onto the sofa, the note still in his hands, chest too tight to breathe. And for the first time in years he cried, not from anger, not from frustration, but from pure pain, not because she'd left him, but because, deep down, he knew. She'd left because of love. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the sofa in the empty cabin, the note in his hands. He read it, reread it, until the words began to blur, and only silence answered. I still don't know how to live without hiding. He understood. He understood her fear, understood the guilt, understood why she'd run, but he didn't accept it. Because if there was something Nathan had learned in the last few months, it was that love doesn't give up. Love doesn't run. Love stays, even when everything seems impossible. And he loved Victoria. Loved her in a way he never imagined he could. When the sun broke through the fog over the mountains, Nathan stood. The note was still in his pocket, the fear in his chest. But the decision was firm. He was going after her. No matter where she'd gone, no matter how long it took, he was going to find her, and he was going to bring her back. Nathan drove all day. The car, the road, the same emptiness. He called everyone who knew Victoria, old agencies, friends she'd mentioned. Nobody knew where she was, or if they did, they weren't telling. He went through hotels, inns, any place she might be hiding. The radio was silent. The phone didn't ring. Each curve in the mountain seemed to say the same thing. She's gone. Nothing. It was as if she'd disappeared. When evening came, Nathan was about to give up. He was sitting in the car, parked at a viewpoint overlooking the mountains, trying to think of somewhere he hadn't looked yet. And then he remembered, the first time he'd driven up that road, the fog, the nervousness, the feeling he was about to find something that would change everything. He remembered the gate, the cabin surrounded by pines, the look in her eyes when she opened the door. Suspicious but curious. She went back, he thought. She went back to the only place where she feels safe. Nathan started the car and drove up the mountain one more time, guided only by memory, by the memory of the look that had haunted him for 5 years. When he arrived, it was already night. The cabin was dark except for a faint light in the living room window. Victoria's car was parked in front. Nathan felt his heart race. She was there. He got out of the car slowly. The cold mountain air cut his skin. He walked to the gate and stopped. For a moment, he just looked at the cabin, at the place where everything had begun, and where, somehow, everything had to end, one way or another. He rang the bell, waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. And then the door opened. Victoria appeared in the doorway, hair messy, eyes swollen from crying, wearing an old sweatshirt and pajama pants. When she saw him, she froze. Nathan. Her voice came out like a broken whisper. He didn't respond, just looked. And in that look, there was everything words couldn't say. "How did you find me?" Victoria asked, tears already beginning to fall. "I always would have found you, Victoria. Always." She shook her head, backing up a step. "You shouldn't be here. You should have let me go." "I can't," Nathan said, his voice firm but gentle. "I can't let you go, Victoria. Not without fighting for you." Victoria covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. "I was going to leave again. Tomorrow I was going to disappear for good." Nathan felt his chest tighten. "Why?" "Because I'm going to destroy you," she shouted, dropping her hands. "Don't you see? Wherever I go, chaos follows. I'm going to drag you down with me. Then drag me," Nathan interrupted. Victoria held her breath. "What?" Nathan took a step forward. "Drag me, Victoria. Drag me wherever you are." "Because I'd rather be in chaos beside you than at peace without you." The tears flowed freely now. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." He took another step. "I love you. I love you in a way that doesn't make sense. In a way that scares me. But it's the most real thing I've ever felt in my life." Victoria shook her head, her voice coming out strangled. "I'm so afraid, Nathan." She backed up half a step, as if still testing the ground between them. But Nathan advanced firmly, and the world seemed to shrink until it fit just the two of them. "I know. And it's okay to be afraid. But don't run from me. Please, Victoria. Don't run." She closed her eyes, trying to control the sobs. "I don't know if I can be strong enough." Nathan finally crossed the distance between them. Held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "You don't have to be strong alone. That's what I'm here for. To be strong when you can't. To hold you when the world seems too heavy." Victoria looked into his eyes and saw the truth. He wasn't going to give up on her. No matter how much she pushed, no matter how many times she ran, he'd be there. Always. "I love you," she whispered, her voice broken. "I love you so much it hurts." Nathan smiled, his own tears falling now. "Then stay with me. Stay and let it hurt together. Let us face this together." Victoria let out a sob and then finally nodded. "Okay, I'll stay." Nathan pulled her into a tight embrace. Victoria melted into him, arms around his neck, crying against his shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time. In the cabin doorway, under the mountain fog, just existing for each other. And as the night advanced, something changed. The fear was still there, but it was no longer bigger than the love. The guilt still existed, but it was no longer suffocating, because now Victoria wasn't alone. And Nathan had found what he'd been searching for 5 years. Not just the face from a magazine, but the real woman. Broken, imperfect, scared, and still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. They went into the cabin together. Victoria made tea. Nathan lit the fireplace, and they sat on the sofa, side by side, hands intertwined, in silence. There was nothing more to say. Not that night. Just existing there, together, was already enough. After a while, Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "I'll never give up. You're stuck with me now." Victoria laughed, a low laugh, tired, but true. "I think I can live with that." Nathan smiled. "Me too." And there, in the cabin high in the mountains, surrounded by fog and silence, Victoria finally allowed something to change inside her. She stopped being the woman who ran and became the woman who chose to stay, not because she didn't have fear, but because love was bigger. Outside, the fog covered everything except what burned between them. The next morning, Nathan woke with Victoria still sleeping beside him. The dawn light filtered through the curtain, touching her face with delicacy. For an instant, Nathan was afraid to blink and wake from the dream, but then she took a deep breath, and the world seemed to exist again. He stayed there just watching. The woman he'd pursued for 5 years. The woman he'd almost lost. The woman who was now his wife-to-be. The center of his universe. When Victoria woke, he was already dressed, making coffee in the kitchen. "Good morning," she said, appearing in the doorway, still sleepy, wearing one of his sweaters. Nathan smiled. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" Victoria nodded, approaching and wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "I'm better than I've slept in a long time." He turned and kissed her forehead. "Come, I want to show you something." Nathan took her to the viewpoint. It was a place high in the mountains, a few miles from the cabin, where you could see the entire expanse of Aspen. The fog still covered part of the valley, but the sun was beginning to tear through it, revealing the pines, the mountains, the raw and wild beauty of that place. They stopped at the edge of the cliff, where the world ended in fog. The wind beat strong, and Victoria had the feeling that one step was all it took to fall or fly, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Victoria looked at the horizon and breathed deeply. "It's beautiful here," she said. Nathan looked at her. "I know." But he wasn't talking about the landscape. Victoria noticed, turned to him, eyes shining. "Why did you bring me here?" Nathan took her hand and intertwined their fingers. "Because I need to tell you something I've kept for a long time." Victoria waited, heart accelerating. Nathan took a deep breath. "It's been 5 years since I saw you for the first time. 5 years that look has haunted me. And that day I made a promise to myself." He stopped, eyes fixed on hers. "I swore that one day you'd be mine. And I went to the end of the world looking for you." Victoria felt tears rising. "And you found me," she said, her voice trembling. "I found you." Nathan smiled. "And I'm not letting you go. Ever." Victoria held his face with both hands. "But stay with me only if it's for love, not out of promise, not out of obligation. Only for love." Nathan pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm staying for love, Victoria. And even if the world ended now, I'd still stay." And he kissed her. A slow kiss, deep, full of promises. The wind blew strong around them. The fog enveloped them as if the entire world had stopped to witness that moment. When they separated, Victoria rested her head on his chest, listening to his heart beat strong and steady. And there, at the edge of the viewpoint, at the end of the world, she finally let the past rest. The pain had transformed. The fear had yielded. And the love they'd built together in the midst of chaos, guilt, and healing, had won. The wind carried the fog away. Time passed, and when it returned, it brought peace. 2 years later, the cabin high in the mountains had changed. Not much. It was still the same refuge surrounded by pines, the same porch where everything had begun. But now it had life. Laughter echoed through the morning. Music played in the kitchen. There were fresh flowers in every room, and the smell of coffee always in the air. Nathan had made the most important decision of his life, leaving Denver, not completely. He still managed Porter and Stone Kuchar, but now from home, remote meetings, occasional trips when really necessary. The team had adjusted, Business continued prospering. But for the first time, work wasn't everything. Victoria was everything. They got married 6 months after that day at the viewpoint. It was a simple ceremony. Just them, a few close friends, and the mountains as witness. Victoria wore a white flowing dress, flowers in her hair, no heavy makeup. Nathan wore a grey suit, no tie, and when they said yes, there was no doubt, no fear, just certainty. A year later, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. The news came on an ordinary morning. She'd taken the test alone, trembling, not believing the result. When she showed Nathan, he picked her up and spun her around the kitchen, laughing like a child. And then he cried with joy, with relief, with gratitude for everything they'd been through to get there. When their daughter was born, they named her Claire. Small, perfect, with her mother's eyes and her father's smile. And when Nathan held her for the first time, he felt something he never imagined feeling. Completeness. It was a Saturday morning, and the sun entered softly through the kitchen window. Victoria was sitting at the table, Claire on her lap, now 6 months old, all chubby and curious, trying to reach her mother's coffee cup. "No, sweetheart. That's Mommy's," Victoria said, laughing, moving the cup away. Claire let out a little squeal of protest and clapped her hands, laughing by herself. The purest sound that had ever filled that cabin. Nathan was leaning against the counter, just watching. Watching the woman he'd pursued for 5 years. The woman he'd almost lost. The woman who was now his wife. The mother of his daughter. The center of his universe. Victoria looked at him and smiled. "What?" Nathan shook his head. "Nothing. I'm just happy." Victoria extended her free hand to him. Nathan approached and took it, intertwining their fingers. "Me too," she said. "Me too." Claire gave a happy squeal, as if agreeing, and Nathan laughed, a light laugh. True, free. He leaned down and kissed his daughter's head, then kissed Victoria. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For staying. For not giving up on us." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Thank you for coming to get me. For not letting me run." Nathan smiled. "Always." They stayed there, the three of them, in the kitchen lit by morning sun, surrounded by the mountains, by the fog that no longer frightened, by the silence that was now peace. And Victoria realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for her entire life. It wasn't fame. It wasn't success. It wasn't approval. It was this: love, family, home. Outside, the mountains breathed. The fog rose slowly, revealing the pines, the mountains, the world that kept spinning. And between the trees, the wind seemed to keep the sound of their laughter, like someone eternizing the love that chose to stay. Inside, time had found its own rhythm. A rhythm made of morning coffee, baby laughter, intertwined hands, and fulfilled promises. Victoria looked out the window and smiled. The past had rested, the fear had yielded, and love, that love born improbably, that grew in the midst of pain, that almost got lost but chose to stay, had won. Because in the end, they discovered the simplest and deepest truth of all. Some loves aren't born for now. They're born for after, when time has already taught, when the heart has already broken. When the soul understands that loving isn't about staying whole, it's about rebuilding yourself in the other. And there, high in the mountains, between baby laughter and the smell of coffee, Victoria and Nathan discovered, the end of the world isn't when everything ends. It's when, finally, everything begins. If this story touched you, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Smash that like button and subscribe to Exciting Stories. He waited 5 years for that look, and it was his love that taught a wounded woman how to live again. Don't miss our next story. Hit that subscribe button now and let love find you too.